Uh-oh. Hello, everyone. This is the Working Class Power Hour podcast. It's episode 10. I'm joined with Eric Basir, ATU Local 308 Executive Board member in Chicago, Chicago CTA. My name is John Freddy, former Executive Board member, TW Local 100, and one of the co-founders of the Local 100 Fight Back Coalition. And we're joined today to talk about a contract in Chicago that was recently passed, which will seem very familiar to New York City transit workers, in that it, of course, includes effective wage cuts and more falling behind inflation. So I'm going to let Eric sketch out a little of how it's being sold in Chicago and how it came about. So, Eric, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thanks, John. And, thanks everybody for tuning in and checking us out. If you're live, make sure you put your comments there, your thoughts as we present ideas and opinions, information, and also share it. Make sure you share this podcast wherever you are. The more eyes and ears we have on union workers in our industry and elsewhere that are speaking up, the better off we'll be uh, as union workers. Now, in Chicago, we are dealing with a sort of, they call it a little different out here. They call it a fiscal cliff. And they're saying we don't have the money. We're going to run out of money. The COVID funds were running out of money. But as we know, there's plenty of money for wars and prisons and endless amounts of billions and billions, not just single digit billions, but double and triple digit billions for war, for the security state, prisons, jails. The solution to all of our problems is policing and punishment. And it hasn't worked, at least for the rest of us. It works for those that own the corporations and the landowners and the agribusiness, but it doesn't work for us. And fear is how they control us. Fear in getting us to fight each other over crumbs. Hey, we're doing our podcast. um, but just so you know, you're live. It's my wife there.
Yeah.
Um, she always tells me I don't want to be in it. Well,
No, she's in it.
she's in it. But that's okay. Do you want to wave? No, she
Not
doesn't.
so much.
Okay, not today. Anyways, uh, now one of the tactics that they're using is to side. They blindside us with disasters, with chaos, and we hashtag disaster capitalism. And that's what they're doing right now in Chicago, specifically with a historic, unprecedented offer from our employer, the Chicago Transit Authority, has uh, offered us an unprecedented, historic 4% raise and contract extension, because our contract has expired December 31st, 2023. So we're 6 months into having no contract. Nothing is being done. The union misleadership, and I'm of the officials at Local 308. I'm of them. I'm elected. Um, our presidents have told us nothing, but they got this offer from our employer. They never told the board. They never told the membership. And if you tell the membership, you got to tell the board. But they never told us about this until the last minute, even in Local 241. There was a membership meeting last week. Nothing was said about it. And then all of a sudden, the next day, poof, here's this letter. Oh, an unprecedented, historic raise written by the ghostwriter for our president, the CTA attorneys. The ATU, the union attorneys. But did you know that they also work for our employer? Yeah, isn't that nice? One big happy family. We're all in the same boat, right? So a 4% raise will be granted to us, the lowly CTA workers, about $1, maybe $1.50, maybe $1.80 something cents. It's going to go up. You're going to go up about $1, effective July 1st. If you vote yes for this historic and unprecedented offer from our benevolent, beautiful employer. Our union officials have said they've been strong arming and negotiating hard with our employer and threatening them to expose the terrible working conditions. Well,
they're not going to do anything about them. They're
right? Yeah,
just going to talk about them.
We're just going to talk about it. We're going to put out a video, maybe some cartoons, and a hashtag and a meme. But we've been doing that for years. And the TWU Local 100 Fight Back and the Chicago Transit Justice Coalition, we've been organizing workers and letting the media know and about all of our terrible working conditions for years. And ain't nothing changing. So you talking about a threat, dear presidents of the ATU, ain't nothing. We actually do it, and things aren't getting that much better. So you know what it's about. It's about action. That's right. Collective action, direct action. So we have this offer right now. I'm going to screen share real quick.
Sure.
The Chicago Transit Justice Coalition is working with others to organize a contract meeting this Saturday. This is a rank and file effort for the bus side and the rail side. We want to come together Saturday, June 15th at 2 o'clock, 2 to 3:30. I'm going to try to get there. I get out of work at 2:30, so it's going to be a mad dash. But other organizers will be there for you. And we want to make sure we discuss what this is all about and the extension of the contract. Why is that something that's also a part of this agreement? We want to break that down. Now, we're going to be at 3355 South Martin Luther King Drive, or Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. That's the Culver's restaurant, okay? Make sure y'all show up, bus and rail, ATU, whether you pay dues or not. Come on down. Let's talk. Let's meet. Get yourself something to eat. And let's decide what we're going to do. We're going to vote no. We should promote that. If we're going to vote yes, which none of y'all that I talk with, a very few minority are not in support of this thing. It was shoved down our throats. No one even asked us. No one. Even, what do you want? Do you want to raise? Like a 4%, I'm thinking, when she said 4, I'm thinking I misheard it. It was 40. And I'm listening, and then maybe it was 14. I keep listening, and no, it is 4. Damn. And then I got to share this with the membership. Well, I'm going to share it with them. Yeah.
You have a comment here on this on the feed. It says, in my Alexander Alvarado says, in my opinion, I feel the sudden quote raise came after a push from the track workers to decertify. They knew we wouldn't stop there, so they rushed to extend our expired contract and buy everyone's vote with this 4%. And then he says we must continue to push.
Yes. And by the way, the laborers too in Local 241, same thing, decertification effort. And because they're going to extend this contract, John and everybody, that means the door.
How far are they extending it, by the way? I'm sorry.
To the end of the year, this year.
Oh, it's just extending the current agreement that's expired for another year, right?
Yeah. But that's going to shut the door. That's going to shut the door to paid sick leave, which is now a state law.
Okay.
And the way our contract is written, it's in force, even when it's expired. It's not.
Yeah, well, I mean that's how all of our contracts are written.
Yeah.
That we have the Triborough Amendment here in New York City. That means the contract continues. In effect, I mean, and that's a good thing that bosses can't just strip out the things they don't want in the contract.
Right.
But at the same time, if we're not getting the kind of improvements that we want, why sign an extension?
Yeah. Oh, it's just horrible.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, I did email the vice president of our local to request the actual memorandum of understanding regarding this.
They didn't give that to you
yet? Nope.
Yeah. This was Chewy, by the way.
Hey, Chewy.
He had to be a part of the show.
Yes, otherwise he'll be barking.
So in any Chewy, you're dominating this. Come on. So in any case, are there any plans for the next contract struggle? Are they saying anything about what the hell they're doing next year?
Oh yeah, it's gonna keep going. We're gonna keep negotiating more raises, and your contract proposal items are still on the table, and we're working hard, fighting for you in secret.
I love how they always come out of the negotiations with sweat dripping from their brow, and we saved the city. We saved the city. We have labor peace, which is
peace.
Yeah, labor peace, which is when they're a constant war with us, a one-sided class war, gutting our living standards, attacking our communities, cutting our service. We should want to be at peace with these fuckers. We should want to wave the white flag of surrender and say, we counsel peace. No, I don't think that's a good strategy.
Be happy.
So, Eric, do you have more on this about what's going on in Chicago in general?
Another couple things.
Sure.
We have there was unfair labor practice charges that I had filed on behalf of workers that were threatened with suspension for complaining to me about their working conditions. Those charges were dismissed based solely on that those who were directly affected did not want to write any statements because they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid. And the labor board did, I worked with the labor board to guarantee that they can't be retaliated against, and they just didn't go along with it. So I'm going to appeal it based on the fact that I had asked. They also said there was a particular section that I didn't use properly in the law. And it was supposed to be the union that filed it, not me as a worker. And so I can state that, I kept asking them, what is the proper section of the law? And they never responded. So I'm going to appeal based on that. And also there's a manager that tricked us that's related to that. So I'll do a separate charge just against that manager. And good news, there is a case that was not charges that were not dismissed. I'll be in court with the labor board against the Chicago Transit Authority 6-digit salaried lawyers regarding managers that threatened to suspend workers who had a flyer in the locker room that said, F that appreciation sandwich, we want proper tools and paid sick days. And the manager found that and threatened all of us with suspension. So
what was the argument? The argument was that it was a threat?
Huh?
What was the argument that it was a threat?
The argument was that they threatened to suspend us if they found out who it was that posted the flyer. And so
is it like defacing their property or something? Or how did they?
It was in the locker room. It was just a flyer in the locker room.
Right. So they're basically saying you don't have any rights to freedom of speech anymore.
Right. Which, it's a locker room.
You can put up flyers, right?
Yeah.
So
I
understand.
Yeah, there's even rules like about that if it's a work area, no. There's a rule, a CTA rule if it's a work area, but that's not a work area, a locker room.
Yeah. Well,
So,
if you put it in a work area, then they're going to claim it's a distraction and all that kind
right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I tell people, when you put up flyers, never put it in the work area. Put it in the locker room, the bathroom, the break room.
Yeah, in public areas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So that's
All right.
about it.
So that's a Chicago portion of the update.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to. We try to put Chicago first because we don't want this to be a one-sided united front, and we don't believe in the second city stuff. Like we're not down with New York
Glad
show.
City.
No. But in any case, I just wanted to pivot a little bit to a discussion of congestion pricing here in New York. There's a lot to cover, so I'm not going to get to everything that I've covered in a video that I did a live stream on Sunday. It went into a lot more detail. But I'm just going to try to frame what's going on. So we're going to play an announcement by Janno Lieber yesterday in a news conference about what their next steps are, given that Kathy Hochul decided last Wednesday to indefinitely pause the move towards congestion pricing.
That's the MTA president, right?
No. That's the MTA president, yes.
And for those of you in Chicago and other cities, please, please, please pay close attention to all of this, because this is going on in all of our cities at various intensities. So please, please don't just think this is New York only. No, this is all of us.
And not only that, like even people in smaller cities, like the crisis that we face in New York and Chicago is many times worse in smaller cities because there's a smaller tax base and because the control of the billionaire class is so centralized and among a handful of individual parasites. So their power is greatly outsized to what individual billionaires in New York have. So let me present my screen. I just hold on just a second because my dog is going crazy. Okay, I'll be right with it. Sorry.
I'll keep this going. So, look, everybody, in New York, Chicago, and all the cities, evaporating union jobs with good wages is so important to these billionaire bloodsuckers of the poor, because if we don't have a chance to have the wages we need to invest in ourselves and our communities, we will be run over and we will have no say. We will just be straight up low wage slaves, and that's what they want.
Okay, Eric, I'm gonna start to play the video. I got a new doggy door, and he has like a phobia about going in and out of the doggy door. We had to remove the flap because he was afraid of getting hit with the flap. And so he starts barking when he gets frustrated about going through the door. Anyway, the life of a dog parent. So let me share the screen, and we're going to play Janno Lieber's announcement yesterday on congestion pricing. We're just going to play about 6 minutes. The reason why we're gonna watch it to that point is because there's something very important that he mentions. That's a poison pill in terms of what this will mean for New York City transit workers and riders.
Staff at the MTA and our partners at New York City DOT and New York State DOT have been working with the feds to take all the steps required to implement this groundbreaking program. It's been a huge undertaking, and I really need to thank everybody on Team MTA and on our partner teams who's been involved and who's worked so tirelessly to get us to this point. Thanks also to the partners at the Federal Highway Administration. They're the US DOT professionals who manage the federal side of this program, and they've been incredibly hardworking and professional throughout. So what now? Since the governor's video announcement last Wednesday, and since the conclusion of the legislative session on Friday, there have been a lot of questions and concerns. As much as I want to understand, our job at the MTA is not to be political analysts. As I've said before, the governor plays on a statewide and national field, and sometimes that means we don't look at things exactly the same. But today, instead, I want to talk about the next steps that we at the MTA are taking and must take to make sure that our riders, the 6 million plus New Yorkers who depend on the MTA every day, we make sure that they don't suffer impacts from disinvestment in public transit. So what do we know? First, as I always say, for New Yorkers, mass transit is like air and water. We need it to survive. New York City and our 23 million population region only works because we can move millions of people. 90% of the people coming to the CBD are taking transit. We can move all those people around quickly and without the use of private automobiles. There just ain't enough room on the streets. We are the densest place in North America, and that allows the New York region to be an incredible economic powerhouse. We are 10% of the national GDP. Second, we know we have to keep the system running. As I said before, I give kudos to Governor Hochul for supporting transit, especially for stepping up, along with the state legislature last year in 2023, to shape a new operating budget for the post-COVID era. That was a huge positive step. Third, we need to keep capital investment going to make sure the system is reliable and convenient for everybody. MTA Construction and Development under Jamie Torres Springer has done an amazing job these last few years, knocking out projects, as we say, faster, better, and cheaper than ever before, even during the pandemic. Projects like the L train tunnel, the Long Island Railroad third track, the Penn Station corridor project, all of the ADA station projects have come in under budget, ahead of schedule, or in many cases, both. We need to keep making these kinds of investments and keep making progress on both the current capital program, 2020 to 2024, which is the one impacted by the congestion pricing issue, but also on the next capital program, which is coming a few months in the future. I've spoken to our elected leaders, the mayor, leaders in the legislature, congressmen, about the prioritization of MTA for the region, and everybody agrees we can't let go of the progress that we've made. And finally, we need to be honest, traffic is only getting worse. Sam Schwartz told me last week that traffic is actually measurably slower than it has ever been in his entire career. Sam Schwartz, Gridlock Sam, the expert on our traffic in New York City, notes that it is slower than any time since he began tracking it in the 1970s. So with all that context, let's talk about our next steps. I'm focused on three key areas. How do last week's developments impact on the MTA capital program? How do they impact operations? And how do we manage our obligations under the 2019 state law creating the congestion pricing program? One, on capital funding, we are going to do now, and we have to do an intensive review about the best way to reprioritize and shrink the current 2020 to 2024 MTA capital program. This is not something we do lightly, but we simply cannot award contracts without dedicated funding in place. That's where we are. So here's what we're doing, because we are actually moving forward and it has to be done in a serious manner. Deputy Chief Development Officer Tim Mulligan is going to lead the effort to, as I say, reprioritize, resequence, and shrink the current MTA capital program. And the first step in that is going to be a substantive report on progress at the board meeting we're having on the 26th of June. As part of this reordering, we have to prioritize the state of good repair work that assures the safety of our transit system. This is the basic stuff to make sure that the system doesn't fall apart. We call that state of good repair work. I have asked a legendary safety professional, former MTA chair Tom Prendergast, to help us with this effort, because as we go through all of the projects, we need to focus on those that are most important to maintaining the safety of the system. I'm also paying special attention to our federal funding situation and how do we preserve the grants that have already been awarded, including the Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 grant. Our team at the MTA, along with the folks at USDOT, did amazing work to land that $3.4 billion commitment, and we're going to do our best to prevent it being put at risk, though that is a challenge. Next, I've asked Special Advisor for Federal Policy, Naomi Rennick, who led our efforts during the whole COVID relief collaboration with the Congress. Naomi's going to focus on how do we preserve our federal grants and manage this entire exercise. I've also, in that connection, spoken with Majority Leader Schumer, Representatives Nadler, Goldman, Torres, and others. All of them are committed to helping us make sure that we minimize the impact on the federal funding for the MTA. We don't want to lose that funding, although there are some real complexities right now. Next, Quamel Arroyo, our Chief Accessibility Officer and a senior advisor to me, is going to work with our team and also with the ADA disability community to make sure that we squeeze out as much station accessibility work as possible, notwithstanding the shrinkage of our existing program. Our commitments that we made to the disability community as part of that legal settlement a couple of years ago do have provisions in them for downside scenarios, but we want this to be a collaborative exercise, and I want Quamel to work intensively for them as we figure out what we can do, which is going to be less, and what we prioritize. Operations. The Deputy CFO of the MTA, Jay Patel, is going to lead a review of the operating budget to identify impacts from the loss of congestion pricing revenue to the capital program. This is complicated, but if we are borrowing money earlier to make up for the money we don't have, that has impact on the operating budget because that debt service goes over to operating. There are a lot of MTA employees who are paid in large part or in part out of the capital program. So we have to figure out how the operating budget is going to be impacted as we adjust the capital program as well.
Okay, so that's the poison pill that I was talking about. The congestion pricing deal has absolutely nothing to do with operations. It has to do with funding capital construction projects and ADA, disability enhancements like ramps, like elevators, etc. It has nothing to do with the operating budget. And the funding of the operating budget is supposed to come from tax revenue, bond debt, as you'll see soon, that I'll explain. But that's supposed to be funded. It's not. There's two separate obligations. One is to repair the subways and engage in construction to maintain the subways. The other is to provide the service. So what he's pivoting to already is to attack your service, because there's only so many ways to cut costs. And he says so openly, to pay bond debt. That is not bond debt that was to fund service. It was bond debt that was to fund repairs. So they're going to rob your service, our wages, our jobs, in order to subsidize continuing to pay this onerous debt to a bunch of Wall Street parasites and financial predators at 4% interest, billions and billions of dollars. So that's the pivot already. And just to give credit, I actually noticed this because it was pointed out to me by Ben Valdez of the Progressive Action group in New York City Transit. And it was a great catch by him that this is the smoke and mirrors that they're already pivoting to. The other thing that they're pivoting to is yet another $1 billion of bond debt being floated by Hochul as a way to put off coming up with a new crackpot solution of bourgeois ruling class crackpot realism to solve our problems. While they come up with the next scheme, they're going to float more bond debt and put us even more into debt to these financial predators. So when we talk about bond debt, what does it mean, right? I mean, because it's, like they talk about it and they drone on in this legalistic financial business paper term that nobody really knows what it means. So basically, let me just give you a short background to how we got into this mess. The first thing I want to do is show you federally how the tax burden has been shifted from the corporations and from the rich, from the top 1% onto the average taxpayer, overwhelmingly working class and poor people, but also middle class people as well. So I'm going to share my screen and start putting up some of that information.
I want to add to this too for everyone listening.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bond is another word for slavery, and this is a very serious word that you really got to. It can be used for many meanings. It has many meanings, but that is one meaning. It's slavery.
Well, actually, they're absolutely clear about that, because just so we know, the MTA bond debt is approximately $47 billion at this time. By 2028, it will skyrocket to, according to the New York State Controller, Thomas DiNapoli, it will skyrocket to over $60 billion. The debt service is $3.2 billion a year. That's the debt service. That's the interest. That's not the debt. That's the interest on the debt, $3.2 billion a year. And that amount is more than it costs to provide the service, to buy the equipment, to maintain the equipment, to pay for our health insurance, to pay for our pensions, to pay for everything that is involved in running a massive public service. So their interest payments are more than all of that individually. So I put up on the screen. Can you see this? Is it? Oh no, it's not sharing yet. Hold on a second. Are you seeing the link that I have up from Robert Reich? You see that, right?
Loading. Oh, here it is. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. All right. So Robert Reich is the former labor secretary under Bill Clinton. And, something that's amazing is that after being through the process, the corrupt meat grinder of Washington, he became much more militant and left-wing and pro-worker. And so you'll notice that from the tweet, because he's actually exposing what's happened in terms of the pushing of the responsibility for funding all public services slowly but surely onto the backs of the poor, the working class, and the oppressed. You see here it says the effective federal corporate income tax rate, 1950, 50%. 1960, 37%, 1970, 32%, 1980, 20%, 1990, 25%, 2000, 20%, 2010, 15%, 2020, 13%. And if you think this is something whether the Democrats or the Republicans are in power is going to change, you're kidding yourself, because Donald Trump has put out a blueprint called Project 2025, which is like a 900-page blueprint for fascism that wants to further gut any federal funding for basic public services and force more and more suffering onto the poor and the working class. So in any case, what is going on the federal level is mirrored in what's going on the state level. See, it says here, this is from Bloomberg. And as you notice, I use sources that are these are the business press. I mean, these are people who are not friends of the working class, but they have to cover this, because after all, the bondholders are reading their newspapers. So this is information for them. Says the MTA had $46.7 billion of debt outstanding as of April 24th, and is set to pay $2.8 billion in debt service this year. The 3.2 is by 2025, by the way. It says DiNapoli estimates transit providers' debt will increase to nearly $60 billion in 2028. Principal and interest payments, including for debt that's repaid through a lockbox and not through the MTA's operating budget, will reach $5 billion by 2031. So those are state funds. So in any case, this is what causes the constant crisis in the MTA. You may notice that they'll have a surplus 1 year, and then all of a sudden there's a deficit, and it's just amazing how the deficit is always comes about around the time of our contracts, anytime they actually have to negotiate, supposedly in good faith, they're going to play up the deficits that they have. But those deficits are real. The deficits are not, it's not a fake crisis. It's a very real crisis. And here's another thing that we need to pay in mind when we talk about what's going on in this country. Here's a stunning graph from the other 98% that says that the plummeting tax rates of the richest Americans. For the first time in history, billionaires will have a lower effective tax rate than working class Americans. You can see in 1960, it was 56%, and now it's gone down to 23%, which is lower than the average working class American, was 24%. And this varies depending on how much you make, but you can see the massive transfer of wealth that's going on here. And so let me just stop sharing the screen here and get back to the live stream. So just to frame this discussion, like, why congestion pricing, right? Why is that their solution? It's their solution because they want to make these billions of dollars in profits real. Okay, that's the whole logic of the game, is to keep paying debt and keep hiding their income from taxation. Now the bonds, the nearly $47 billion in bond debt, all that money is triple tax exempt. It's tax exempt on the federal, state, and the city level. So not only are we rewarding these parasites like Donald Trump and others, hedge fund magnates, banks, financial institutions, etc., from the taxes they should be paying to support basic social services, we're also shielding them from federal taxation that should also be going to pay for, national social services. And so basically, when they come up with this plan, they have to figure out who's going to pay the price so that these people don't have to pay the price. And always, they want a war of all against all. They want to pit us against each other and divide and conquer. Now, you would think as one of the most important and most powerful unions in this city, state, and country, that TW Local 100 would have some concern about taxi drivers and Lyft and Uber rideshare workers being fucked by congestion pricing. You may ask, how are they going to be screwed by congestion pricing? Talking about anywhere from $1.50 to $2.50 additional price in the cost of rideshares and taxis. It's $1.50 for taxis. It's nearly $2.50 for rideshare workers. So that means that that's going to cut into their ability to make a living, because you can bet that Uber and Lyft are not going to want to subsidize that increased cost. And if anything, they're going to pass that cost on to the consumer. Then there's the idea that, it's not working class people who drive into the city. People who say that are people who have absolutely no connection to the working class and don't know the slightest clue what the fuck they're talking about. If you live in New Jersey and you take New Jersey Transit, or you take the PATH system, and you see the kind of signal problems they have because of decades of lack of investment in upgrading those signals, upgrading the tunnel, providing more service, buying more equipment, hiring more workers, those commuter rails are a disaster. Long Island Railroad is less so because the tax base is higher and because there are certain areas that demand a functioning commuter rail system. Whereas in Jersey, all the funding has been based on automobiles. And then, the question is, why automobiles? Well, you see the tolls for all the bridges, $15, the outrageous tolls on bridges like the Verrazano Bridge that were paid for 30, 40 years ago, that we still continue to keep paying. And that's shifting the burden of paying for these essential services onto people who can least afford them. And so that's what congestion pricing is. It's a way to target people who have no choice but to drive into the city. And those people are transit workers. Those people are UPS drivers. Those people are people who work for for Verizon, CWA members, people who work for the Postal Service, where there's no way to get into the central business district where they work unless they drive. Or it's the easiest way for them to get into the central business district. And so what that is taking back from us the shitty raises that our rotten business unionist leaders have been able to negotiate so far or surrender. They're taking back even those shitty raises from those workers. Jackie Gleason Depot is in the Central Business District, one of the biggest bus depots in New York City. It's right in the heart of the Central Business District. So then you may ask, well, what is the union's response to this, right? I mean, let's look at who sits on the congestion pricing board. Oh, what a shock. It's John Samuelson, the international president of the TWU. And he's been on the congestion pricing panel since August of 2022. So nearly 2 years he's been on the panel. And he was nominated by Eric Adams as a champion of safe, reliable public transit. And he shares our commitment to get congestion pricing done so we can invest in mass transit and reduce traffic. Now, in general, I'm against any labor representatives on a ruling class board that's filled with parasites. If we should be exposing the fact that these boards are not democratic, and we should be fighting for publicly elected and rank and file union control of these kind of boards. It's unless we do that, I mean, as Eric pointed to in the past, nothing is going to change. It's going to continue to be the same parasites deciding what sacrifices and horrors they plan to visit on the poor and the working class. I know I'm going into a lot of detail. I'm going to try to wrap this up a little bit, but I just want to go into what the response of our union leadership was when congestion pricing hit the shit hit the fan. Let me just get to that quickly.
You know, in the ATU, we have international president John Costa, and he's like a twin of Samuelson. And this 4% raise contract extension, according to the ATU Constitution, we can't, as a local, extend a contract without the international.
Wow, that's
president.
great.
Yeah. So now, I think as we speak, at least yesterday, our local 308 and 241 presidents are with the international president.
Oh, they're negotiating.
Yeah, they're in a some kind of
Closed door
political
meetings?
thing. Yeah.
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 All right. So this is our very well-spoken moron union president, Richard Davis, and this is what he had to say about congestion pricing after the shit hits the fan and Hochul bails on it.
They talk about congestion pricing. Congestion pricing would be great if they add more service. They're not adding service. They're adding nothing more. So if you don't add service, you add congestion pricing, what do you think is going to happen next? The public is going to get frustrated and start assaulting our members again. It's a ripple effect. It's a domino effect. It is not good right now how Janno Lieber and MTA is managing.
Okay, so that is a sum total of what he had to say about this. Let me just close this.
What is it with these union bosses and everything is about? I mean, assaults are bad, no doubt about it, but they keep going to this whole policing issue. It's just astonishing.
Well, I mean, look, it is the assaults are out of control in New York City, but what has Richard Davis done to demand safe working conditions or to shut down unsafe working conditions?
Nothing.
And aside from which, they just found out that this was going to boomerang on transit. He's on the board, Samuelson. What the fuck has he been doing for 2 years? What have you been doing? What's the point of being on the board if you're not going to demand and have some consequences for them not providing additional service? Even if you say you could support congestion pricing, which we shouldn't because it's an attack on other workers and it's an attack on ourselves. How did you not know it was going to affect your own workers? You don't know you have bus depots in the Central Business District? I mean, it's just the cluelessness is just next level. But it's, you know, they sit in the lap of the boss and they Angel Lugo says he's collecting cash. He's useless. But I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, they sit on the lap of the boss and they regurgitate all of their talking points. And if you don't think that that's true, look at the flyer that Local 100 put out and they bought ads in all the newspapers pushing congestion pricing. And this is, and you think about,
Wow.
what do you think has more impact? Does it have more impact when a union puts out a flyer like this, which is nothing but the boss's talking points? Congestion pricing will generate billions of dollars for necessary improvements. Here are just a few examples: hundreds of new subway trains, a modernized signal system, thousands of new buses, renovated stations with elevators, revamped bus routes, more frequent service. And they're telling you the New York State legislature must pass congestion pricing. They're engaging in joint lobbying with the boss, with all the boss's promises, and telling us all the goodies we're going to get from congestion pricing. Does that have more of an impact? Or does it have more of an impact when our moron union president has to get up out of bed and make a less than 5-minute contribution with his asinine Monday morning quarterbacking after the deal falls apart? What do you think has more of an impact? How do other workers see us when they're out there spending our dues money to attack other workers and to make life hard on other working class, poor, and even middle class New Yorkers in order to give the rich a tax holiday, to continue to give them a tax holiday? And he's Angel Lugo says it's a money grab for those big shots. Oh, well, yes, absolutely. Speaking of money grabs, I just want to get to what's going on in New York City, because we talked about the federal level and why there's no tax base. But let's talk about why there's no tax base in New York City. Here we have an article from, again, the business press. This is from Crain's New York Business. Can you guys see this? Can you see it?
Yeah, we got it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. It says the tax zombies of New York State. The city and the state dish out a combined $10 billion in tax breaks and subsidies to fewer than 1% of corporate taxpayers. The public payoff of these deals is murky at best. New York is swarming with zombies. No, not the brain-devouring ghouls in the movies. These zombies are tax breaks and other incentives that elected officials and their appointees have dished out over the years to a select number of New York companies and industries. Whether intended or not, they tend to last for eternity or something close to it. The Lord High Zombie is Madison Square Garden, where the Knicks and the Rangers play, for those outside of New York City. The sports stadium, which hasn't paid a nickel in property taxes since the state granted a blanket and perpetual exemption 41 years ago under Mayor Ed Koch. I'm sure many transit workers don't even remember Ed Koch, but it's a long fucking time. This saved Chairman James Dolan's company an inflation-adjusted $916 million in the past 40 years, including $42 million last year, according to figures from the city. Zombies can also be found at Yankee Stadium and Citi Field. Not only are the Yankees and Mets exempt from property taxes, but the payments they do make, which would ordinarily pay for city services, instead go to their stadium's bondholders until the 2040s. Once again, it's always the bondholders. It's always the bondholders who benefit. It's always the bondholders who never have to sacrifice. It's always the bondholders who must be paid on time. And these deals are negotiated through when the parks were built 15 years ago and continue indefinitely. Hollywood has its own New York zombie in the form of $420 million in annual reimbursements to movie and TV show producers who shoot in New York. And Hochul and the state legislature have expanded the benefit to $700 million a year to extend this zombie, which made its debut in 2004 and extending it to 2034. The entire insurance industry has been exempt from city income taxes since 1974, a benefit that cost $613 million in foregone revenue in 2022 alone. Then there's also talking about fuel for airlines has been exempt since 1965, costing the state $122 million last year. So when we talk about, well, where does the crisis come from? There is no tax base to support any of these basic public services. And so long as that's the case, they're going to continue to float this bond debt as a way to kick the can down the road and also to rationalize service cuts, fare increases, layoffs, the vaporizing of our pensions, attacking retiree health care, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And what they want to do is, one of the hashtags in the introduction of the Working Class Power Hour is that this is disaster capitalism. that their system is in crisis because it's dysfunctional, because they're a warring band of brothers with their knives out for each other's throat, and because they don't actually produce anything. And so they can't plan. They can't have any kind of effective planning because they're all worried about their little fiefdoms, and they're all, basically have their tentacles everywhere trying to force things to happen. And that's not a way to plan an economy. If the working class was in charge of society, we actually have an interest in stopping suffering. We actually have an interest in making life better for our communities. We actually have a collective ethos, like on the job. Transit workers know they're nothing without their coworkers. That unless they work collectively with their coworkers, even in a place like buses where you're an individual bus driver, you can't get anything done unless you work collectively with those in your depot. And when you don't, it creates dysfunction. It creates suffering and hardship, and it creates all sorts of problems. Train workers, if you're a train operator, your train operator is the only person you can count on, if you're a conductor, and vice versa. In every way, the working class is trained socially to cooperate, and they use that against us. They want to tap into the best interest of working class people who are willing to sacrifice in order to make things just a little bit better for themselves, their communities, and for future generations. And they try to manipulate us to rationalize that. How else can things work? How else can the world work except you sacrificing to make things better? And so they prey upon our best instincts, and they weaponize it and use it against us. And so that's what's going on here. So when they say, oh, they care about the environment, bullshit. They never cared about the environment. So apparently green energy and revamping the economy to shift away from fossil fuels only matters in rich white areas in Lower Manhattan. Everywhere else, fuck you, right? Because where are people going to park in order to get around these fees? They're going to park in poor, low-income neighborhoods, largely communities of color, the Bronx, Staten Island, parts of Jersey, upstate, Connecticut. And they're going to circle around trying to find parking because more and more people are going to try to do that. And that's going to cause smog and pollution. But we care about the environment? Bullshit. So in any case, sorry I've gone into a lot of detail, but it's necessary for people to understand how we're being set up and who's at fault for that. So Eric, the floor is yours. I'm sure you have many comments about that.
Hey, I think as usual, you cover what is going on and behind the scenes here. And when the union officials start talking, and then right away they try to talk in these real almost not even populist, but cheap and narrow. This is going to cause people to attack us, and then you got your own international president on the board. It's just chaos, and they have it like this by design. I mean, we really, as public transit workers, we could actually get a lot more done faster if we get involved in our membership meetings, in whatever the union people are doing, but especially organizing our work sites where we are, and TW Fight Back Justice Coalition. For years, we've been doing these things, and they're not popular, but they're effective because we leave what we're doing reverberates throughout the unions and throughout the city. So we need more members. You all got to stand up and organize. Don't just vote and hope. Vote and work.
Yeah. I just put a comment up on the screen from Angel Lugo saying also that Willie James, the former president of Local 100, is also on the board. Or was, I guess he was on the board because he passed away. Anyway. So in any case, also what is missing here is that there used to be stock transfer taxes, right? There used to be a a small amount of a small fee that was charged on every transfer of a stock in New York State. And that has been eliminated since 1981. They have 100% rebate on that tax. So for example, like if you buy a cooperative in New York State, you pay taxes on the transfer of the shares of that cooperative that you're purchasing. You pay the tax. Largely working class, middle class people who can afford to buy into a cooperative, you get fleeced with that tax, but the corporations do not. And that one tax, it's let me just pull up how much it would actually. It's like a quarter for each trade. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous amount of money, ridiculously small amount of money. Okay, this is from Assemblymember Phil Steck, and it says that since 1981, the tax has been rebated back to Wall Street firms. If fully collected, the stock transfer tax is estimated to raise up to $14 billion or more annually. So now the fee, it was like 3 cents on every $100 traded. And other places all over the world, even Hong Kong, have stock transfer taxes. And that one small investment in actually holding the ruling class accountable to pay for services that they use would mean that all the suffering would go away. It's no surprise where the suffering is coming from. Like Trump and all these right-wing ruling class forces, they want to point to the other. They want to point to immigrants. They want to point to people of color. They want to point to women, gays and lesbians, transgender people, anybody but the ruling class, in order for you to feel that the reason why you're suffering is because of some other person who is powerless. They want to divide the powerless against each other in a war of all against all. But it's no secret who the people who are benefiting most in society are. You can read the Fortune 500 list. You can find out how much they pay in taxes. These were all public records. This is nobody's hiding this from us except ruling class propaganda, except those institutions of the trade union movement who practice business unionism. The only people who are misdirecting us and engaging in gaslighting are people who are not on our side. And we need to start to understand how to think independently on a class basis, class consciously. And every time someone tells you to sacrifice, watch out for your wallet. Okay? Every time somebody tells you that this is the only solution, watch out for your wallet. And, we have a lot of liberals telling us, I don't understand how transit workers could be against congestion pricing. I just can't understand it. Why would they be against all these goodies that they're going to get with congestion pricing? You know what some of the goodies are with congestion pricing? $81 million elevators. 10 times more than it costs anywhere in the world to produce an elevator. Somehow in New York City Transit, there's some kind of alternate dimension that we step into, that it costs $81 million to build an elevator. How much did it cost to build a staircase with 28 steps? $30 million in Times Square. Okay? So when they say, oh, you're going to get all these perks and goodies, guess who's going to benefit from the perks and goodies too? The same billionaire fucking parasites, the same contractors, the same construction industry parasites who've been benefiting the whole time. And we have to understand, consider the source. Consider who's telling you that there's no other choice. Consider who's telling you all the great things you're going to get from this. And that's, we have to think critically, and we have to defend ourselves. And the best way to defend ourselves is to defend our consciousness. And the best way to change consciousness is through struggle. And we see too little of that. And that's why workers become demoralized and cynical. But we also have to understand that becoming demoralized and cynical, that works for the bosses too. They don't give a shit. They don't care that you love them. They're not so deluded to believe that they're going to engage in the kinds of brutal attacks they engage in order to justify their system, and somehow everybody's going to love them. They don't care whether you hate it or you love them, so long as you don't believe in yourselves, so long as you don't organize struggle to force them to do anything, as long as you accept that there's nothing we can do to change the current course of society. And that idea that it's impossible to change the course of society defies the entire history of humanity, defies the civil rights movement, defies the existence of our trade unions, defies any idea of the world being created in any other way than rich people, rich white people, determining how the world will work. That is not how social change happens. It just isn't. And none of our rights and freedoms were secured that way, and they will all disappear so long as we continue to believe that. Eric.
And we hear this at work every day. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Yeah, well, there's only one. I have 8 cars to sweep. I'm on a whole platform in 3 minutes. Can't do it, but it is what it is. It's unacceptable, and you're getting written up for that. You're one person with 8 cars to sweep, and you get written up for poor work performance. It is what it is. No, it's struggle. We have to struggle to change that. Another thing I hear, it relates right to what you're saying, and they got us thinking this. It's their company. It's their company.
Yeah, we can't. I hear that all the time. We can't tell them how to run their company.
You can't tell them how to. See, Chicago, listen to what John is telling you. The same crap you're being indoctrinated with is the same crap New York's being indoctrinated with.
Yeah, union leaders have literally said that to me. Like, we can't tell the boss how to run their company. All we can do is negotiate better wages and benefits and,
I hate
and
that.
the highest price we can for our labor. That's all we can do. And so long as we believe that, that's how it will be.
Yeah.
And
we'll lose. Just continue to lose.
Malcolm X will be rolling in his grave here.
Yeah. I mean, we got to stop accepting this crap from these union officials. You can't tell the company what to do, and they can't tell the union what to do. Lies. They're always telling us what to do, and we just go right along.
Yeah.
Like what you're doing with congestion pricing, TW100 is doing with congestion pricing, our leadership is doing with the fiscal cliff. And it's just selling crap to us. And stop going along with it. Stop accepting. We can tell the company what to do, and we should.
Well, the only thing that gives us the power to do that is our numbers, and those numbers being mobilized. So, I mean, we got, and, Angel Lugo saying, the union's not strong. Well, the union's not strong because it's not fighting back. The union's not strong because it has no cultural memory of struggles that won. And because even those who know how to lead struggles don't, or just throw up their hands and say, oh, what can we do?
They don't want to struggle. They don't want it.
Yeah. I mean, and, I think there's another. Yeah, it says yes, true. So, we have to get out of the idea that the union is them. We have to get that out of our mind. There's a famous rap song. I forget. I keep raising it, but I keep forgetting who said it. It's like, you got to clean the chambers of your brain like a baby 9. Like, we have to cleanse our mind of boss logic. We have to cleanse our mind of business unionism and of all of the weakness that comes from our leadership. And we need to stop thinking that somebody's coming in on the white horse to save us. It's just not going to happen. And it's bad for us. That kind of ideology is bad for us. It infantilizes us. It treats us like children. It dehumanizes us. And it strips from us any kind of self-respect that we could have. And just as quick as things have moved in one direction, it can move quickly in the direction of power, of feeling power instead of powerlessness. But we have to be the engine that drives that. We cannot have anybody else do that for us. And I hear Angel Lugo says, hey, John, you need to run again. I will be running for office in the next election. I will be running for local wide and departmental offices. But, part of the thing that I respond to that with is, yeah, it's great. We all should be running for office. We all should be fighting to be leaders. Yes, people who know better should do better. Absolutely. But we have to get out of the idea that any one individual is going to speak so well to the bosses, or is going to solve our problems for us, or is going to be the new daddy for the bosses. It doesn't work that way. We have to inflict our will collectively on the bosses, or they're not going to fear us. It doesn't matter how well you speak. It doesn't matter how much you know. It matters what you can implement, what kind of consequences you can implement upon them to get them to be disciplined.
And I want to give an example of exactly what you're talking about. So, I'm elected executive board, right? So I'm in my first pick. So, we got workers picking their schedules and stuff. And two workers, are being forced to pick a particular job at a particular time at a particular location.
You mean because package picks you're talking about?
Well, there's because of their qualifications. So these are maintenance workers that have special qualifications to deal with special issues, right? Mm-hmm. So they're forcing them. They don't want to pick a certain schedule. They want to do their job at a certain day, their seniority, their time in.
Yeah.
But it's being disregarded because there's not enough people with that qualification doing the job because they're too cheap to hire, too cheap to train, etc. So what could I do? Well, I wrote a firm email saying this can't happen. I spoke and called the worker and said, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? I can speak for you, but that's it. There's no power. And that's what I keep telling my coworkers. I'm like, great. You can elect me. Y'all want me to run? Fine. I'm running for president next time. We're doing it, right? But are you going to organize? Are you going to stand up? Are we going to fight back? Or are you just going to vote for me and hope? Me and John, you're just going to hope for me and John to fix stuff because we are fearless. Yeah. But we got no power. You're the power.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing too is that workers get demoralized, even those who have advanced consciousness and see what's going on and are angry and want to fight back. They get demoralized because the response from their coworkers is apathy, or they don't believe that anything is going to change. And what we have to understand is that it can be an active minority of workers that can lead struggles, that can rally the rest of workers to actually believe that it's possible.
Yes.
But workers don't think of things moralistically. They don't think of things, well, this isn't right, so it should change. Because they haven't seen that. They have no experience of that happening. Of people just putting the will in their head and making things happen, forcing things to change. They think concretely. And if you can't show them a path and a way forward of how things can change, they're not going to follow. So we need those who see the course of development and see the danger of us losing everything that we fought for and struggled over decades, to begin to band together, to begin to collectively show how even a small group of workers can lead the way forward. And there's too much talking and not enough organizing, and we have to get out of that habit. You can vent your frustrations all you want, but venting your frustrations doesn't threaten them. Venting your rage in action that cripples them, that's what impacts how they act. If they are no longer able to continue to do business in the way they've done business because you won't let them do business in the way they've done business in the past, that's when change becomes a reality. Otherwise, it's just talk.
Getting those membership meetings, y'all. Especially
please
today.
Get out to the meeting.
Yeah, Local 308. We got a membership meeting today. Let me know what kind of action you want to organize, what kind of motions you want to put forward to check these boss-loving, bootlicking sellouts.
And Chicago members, please vote on your contract. Please.
Oh, yeah.
It's desperately important. You must vote on your contract. Okay. We're never going to get out of this mess that we're in unless we understand that we have to be heard. Whether you think there's a solution, an easy solution in the future or not, you must vote in these elections. We must demand our right to vote. This is a democratic institution. A democratic institution that doesn't function democratically for the working class is a disaster. It's suicide. We have to change that. Thank you, everybody, for so much for your time. We know we went a little bit past an hour. We generally try to keep it at an hour. We're probably not going to be on next week, but we'll also we'll be coming back probably in 2 weeks. But please keep the comments going, and please get in touch with us about ways in which we can work together. We don't put any obstacles in the path of uniting with anyone and everyone in the working class to build struggle right now. We don't think these struggles can wait. Please don't think so either. We can't let the time slip away, because time is not on our side. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night, everybody.
Take
Be
care,
safe.
everybody.
Take care.